going to do is we're going to try and hang the rudder without dropping on my head.
Hi, I'm Dani, this is Toryn, and we're turning this lifeboat into a liveaboard. After a long summer in the boatyard, the end of August brought with it a mad scramble of last-minute projects to get done before we splashed back in the water. Today, you'll get to see some of them, and spoiler alert, this year we're going through the exact same thing.
What we're going to do is we're going to try and hang the rudder without dropping on my head. So this goes up in here. That. And then my lovely wife is gonna help me assemble this.
We were able to reuse much of the steering assembly in Luja, but Toryn did make some new pieces. Below his hand you can see the new stainless steel stern tube that he machined. Everything else he cleaned up and recoated, epoxy coated, whatever needed to be done to get it solid and back in the water. We also added a bunch of zincs to various bits and pieces. Then Toryn used so much Sikaflex to attach everything together. As part of this project, and unfortunately I don't think we really show it, though there's a tiny clip at the end of this episode, we also put in a Dripless shaft seal instead of a traditional stuffing box. Those are becoming more and more popular over the past decade or so, so you may well have one in your boat or have seen it, but instead of the old stuffing boxes, which were literally a box filled with flax that your propeller would pass through and it would drip a little bit at a time, and I believe that would then go into your bilge and get pumped out, and that was totally normal. But now what they're starting to do is these dripless seals, and so those have like a rubber flange on them that comes in and out. There's a hose that is involved. I think that's sort of a lubricating situation, but long story short, as the name would imply, they are totally dripless. For us, we do have a huge bilge, so it's actually fine if we do get some water in our bilge, but a dry bilge is a nice bilge, as we all know. And so if we can have one of those, we're obviously going to do it. We'll see how it goes once we're properly moving around in the water. Here, Toryn is showing off another piece that he made, whacking it together. It's to hold the stern tube in place. So the propeller, of course, the shaft needs to be aligned properly with the motor. The motor will come back into this engine bay, I would say soon. Really, it's not soon, let's be honest. It's like October of 2021 we're going to see this in here. But in the meantime, everything is getting aligned here. He's epoxied these bolts into place, and so once everything is locked in, it should be nice and flat, level, plumb, so that it's all in line with the motor. So what am I looking at?
Stern tube assembly, and we're just putting the zinc on it. And then we're going to epoxy it all so that it's got less surface area of metal and water.
What's all that stuff?
What's all what stuff?
Like the bronze bit.
So this is a rubber seal that there's bronze is like pushes down for the O-ring to sort of seat around this shaft, and then there's some added Sikaflex on top just to be 100% sure that the water's not going to come pouring in.
And there it is, all back together, though we did subsequently paint the orange cone with the black ablative bottom paint. We're so curious how it all steers once it's back in the water. It's supposed to be really good in forward, not so great in reverse. To us, that sounds like a normal boat, but we haven't had one with the cone before, so we'll see. And then it was back inside for a day or two. Knowing August on the coast, it was probably raining, and so we headed in to work on our cabin. Toryn is framing the wall And like we've said before, we're using wood for most of our framing because for us, we actually want weight, and so weight and size isn't a huge concern. You could see there that that vertical beam or stud was a little bit shy of the ceiling, and that's because he came in after and used a bunch of fiberglass and epoxy to connect it to our ceiling and really get it nice and solid. You can see him talking, you can't hear it. I'm teasing him about a nickname, so you're not missing too much. And then as soon as the weather cleared, we were back outside to do some more sanding and prep for paint, which is always really exciting.
We are gonna paint our topside paints, just a quick coat before we go back in the water. We still gotta actually properly fair everything in, but we know that our water line isn't right, so we're just doing this to make it look a little bit better before sit in the water for a year while we're working on the interior.
We decided not to use gel coat for a bunch of reasons. I mean, take your pick. We have no idea how to apply it. It's really expensive. We can't do it in the yard that we're in. And it's also really difficult because when it fades, which it will because of the UV, it means that it's quite challenging to match because you won't have exactly the same color that you can just replace with. So we decided instead to roll and tip. Sorry?
It's like horrible.
Yeah. It's a 20-foot paint job. We're wrapping up our 10-foot paint job by trying to touch up these little edges under the rubber with a foam brush. So with the bottom part of our topside paint pretty well done, Toryn started to prime the top in preparation for a very large change. So Toryn's using a tack cloth, which is very slightly sticky, to wipe up all of the dust from where he sanded the primer yesterday. And then once that's done, we can paint. Okay, so we are going to paint the boat today, or part of it. And originally we were going to paint it maroon, but Pettit has discontinued the color we chose. So yesterday we picked up some electric sapphire blue. We don't really know what color that's going to be, so it's a mystery. We'll see in a minute. And we're mixing in some Easy Epoxy Performance Enhancer, which is supposed to make it a little bit glossier and more UV resistant. So in a second we'll see our blue, and then we mix 6 capfuls of performance enhancer in, and then we'll start rolling and tipping. Whoa, it's very, very blue.
And it's metallic-y, it looks like.
Ooh, that's so exciting. It sort of matches Toryn's shirt. He came dressed for the occasion. Anybody needs a quart of burgundy, we have that for sale. Wasn't that 6?
No, that was 5.
Okay.
I think. Pretty sure?
They should just tell you to fill it up to the dangerously close to the top level. Oh my god. Okay, so I'll show you guys what Toryn shakes that. What we're painting is the sort of white and orange speckledy bits. So these two big panels on both sides, they're essentially what we can practically paint before we go back in the water without clambering around too crazy high on that orange lump. And then of course this part is not ready yet. So we're gonna paint the blue, give everybody an idea of what's coming, and then once we're back in the water, eventually we'll finish it up. But that's why we needed to make sure we bought a paint color that still existed, because not being able to buy the rest of the paint that we needed would have been a small disaster. So that's our plan for today. We'll be rolling and tipping the same way that we did for this. And once again, hoping for about a 15-foot paint job. Whoa. It's America. What do you think?
It looks good. I mean, who knows what color it's gonna dry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the yard parked this boat really close to us just a couple of days ago, so this last bit of work Toryn's having to do in a slightly not ideal location, but I'll show you. So first you roll it on, and you can see the little bubbles that it makes as it's getting rolled on are actually kind of helpful, because then you can see where you have not tipped. And then you take a foam brush and just very gently drag it across the surface, and that helps to smooth out the paint, kind of pops all those bubbles. And then this paint is self-leveling, so over time it will kind of fill in all the little drag marks that you can see, so that it ends up being pretty smooth. And of course we are not experts, and this is
also the first coat.
Also the first coat, and also the second time that we've done rolling and tipping on this boat, so we'll see. But it is amazing how the paint can kind of flatten out from being fairly wavy to really pretty flat over time. You can already see Toryn in it. If it's really hot, you can add a little bit of solvent to the paint so that it dries slower, right?
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool today. It's sort of borderline sweater weather, so we should be fine doing it without. And normally when we did the top sides, we had one person rolling and one person tipping, which would be ideal, but we can't really do that right now because of the setup in the yard. And I very much cannot reach, because if Toryn can barely reach, then I have no hope, so. And so we continued rolling and tipping and getting a couple of coats on most of the boat before going back in the water. The thing is, that blue continued to be really, really, really blue, and you could probably hear my hesitation a little bit when we opened that paint can. It never really grew on me as much as we hoped it might have, and I think for Toryn as well. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll know. If you don't, you should. But we have actually repainted Luja this year, so in a few videos from now you'll see the new color, but she is no longer blue. And then just a day or two before we went back in the water, even after all of those coats and coats and coats of bottom paint, we found a hole we had forgotten. So a little bit of panic. It wasn't even that we forgot, it was that we hadn't noticed it before. And strangely, it hadn't gone fully through the hull, but it was real close. And so Toryn mixed up some thickened epoxy and we filled that in, and hasn't been a problem since. So we're gonna try and fix this uneven line with vinyl boot stripe tape. And the first step is just to wipe the edge because it just needs to be clean and dry. And really, it should be because it's freshly painted, but it's gonna give it a quick wipe and then attempt to install the tape. Okay, so we're using this pressure sensitive boot stripe tape, which is like a vinyl tape on a protective backing, like a big sticker. So we're going to try and roll it along our boot stripe. Here are the instructions. And I'm gonna try and do it on my own so Toryn can prime the boat, but I have the feeling that I may need to give up and get assistance. So I'm quite sure that I am doing this wrong, but I'm basically cutting lengths of this to about 12 to 18 inches because I can't really realistically handle more than that without it getting out of control, especially if there's any curves. And then just taping them on, and once I have it sort of laid out, I'm going to go back after and push it down because it's pressure tape, so there's some chance to re-stick it if you haven't pushed it down really hard, but if you have, then I think we're screwed. So I'm trying to do it kind of gently right now, and then we'll smush it all on permanently after. Some people use boot stripe paint for this, but we decided we didn't want to go around and tape everything twice, like top and bottom, especially because we don't actually know, like we talked about in the last episode, where the water line is going. So this is kind of semi-temporary. We'll see if it ends up being correct, but this felt like a quicker and easier way to go, and it worked out pretty well actually, and I did do it all on my very own. The bottom to be about the same distance. You can see the paint line through the tape, and as long as this edge lines up fairly closely, then just try and smooth it gently to get most of the creases out, and then repeat about 60 times as I go around the book. And just like that, we were going back in the water. We hadn't quite finished our whole list of projects, but we were pretty close and pretty happy with how the summer had gone. It was time to go back to our slip to spend the fall and winter starting to work on the inside. We have talked about it before. We love this machine. It seems way less stressful than going in on slings, and as usual, it was a smooth delivery to the water. Unfortunately, we had not put our motor in, as you know, didn't have batteries yet, and so once again, we got towed back to our slip. The guys at Coldwater Divers, who we normally use, are getting very used to us traveling back and forth on the side of one of their big Zodiacs.
All right. I will meet you around the other side.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So as Toryn sprinted around to the car to drive to our home marina, I got to ride on Luja for the very first time. It was pretty exciting to get a tiny taste of what this is eventually going to be like. I can't wait to go on her, and it's kind of crazy that it's going to be 2 years just about from when we buy her to when we get to cruise her, but I guess all things in life are worth waiting for, and hopefully this is one of those good ones. In the meantime, thank you so much for following along. We hope you're enjoying our journey. Coming up over the winter is a little bit of tile work, some more framing, a lot of planning, and then we'll be catching up with the summer of 2021 and all the work we've just done there. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We are tantalizingly close to 5,000 subscribers. We appreciate you all so much. And for the very latest, don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We'll see you soon.